The LA Kings followed up one of their best performances this season with two subpar performances to close out their road trip. The Kings have hit the quarter pole of the NHL schedule. What do we think about this team, and how do the first 21 games project out for the rest of the season? We'll talk about it all on this edition of Locked on LA Kings.
You are Locked On Kings, your daily podcast on the Los Angeles Kings, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, Kings fans, welcome to Locked on LA Kings, your team every day. Thanks for making Locked on LA Kings your first listen. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube. Please like and subscribe if you're enjoying this content. At last check, we were at 884 subscribers as we are on our goal to reach 900 by the end of November. Please and thank you for the people that have already subscribed and for those of you that will subscribe in the next couple of days. My name is Eddie Garcia. I am your host of Locked on LA Kings. I've worked in sports media for almost 30 years, 20 plus years at the Fox Sports Radio Network. I'm also co-host of the Puck Podcast, a weekly NHL review show that's been putting out content for the past 16 years, and a passionate LA Kings fan for the past 30 years or so. Well, if you have watched or listened to the last couple of episodes, you know that I have been battling something. It has affected my voice, and I have had some coughing fits. Hopefully I sound okay and there will be no coughing during this show. I did take a shot of cough syrup right before I started to record this, so we'll see how that goes. If I start slurring my words, then you'll know why. But anyway, seriously, apologize in advance. If there is any coughing or if I need to take a sip of a beverage to try and lubricate some things there. But anyway, here and doing the best I can with it. Also, making me sick was the way the Kings played this past Friday and Saturday. I'm only slightly joking. The Kings played a pair of games since our last show, a 4-1 loss on Friday in Vancouver and a 3-2 overtime loss in Seattle on Saturday. We are going to briefly recap each game. We'll start with the game that came first, and that was the loss to Vancouver, which was very disappointing on a number of levels. First and foremost, the Canucks have been struggling this season. However, not against the Kings in recent times. Goalie Thatcher Demko, for example, for Vancouver, had one win in 11 games before he beat the Kings on Friday. He had a goals against average of almost 4. What happened, of course, he got a win and he held the Kings to 1 goal. One of their top players, Brock Besser, had 0 goals in 11 games, scored 2 against the Kings. And the Kings played a bad first period in this one. Just not much going on at the start. And you felt like this one would be heading in a bad direction from the very beginning. They did play a bit of a better second period, but they still were down 3-1 after 2. Blake Lizotte with the only goal for LA. Sean Walker and Alex Edler had the assists. 6 times this season, the Canucks had lost a multi-goal lead and ended up losing a game. They had a multi-goal lead against the Kings going into the third period. Did they blow it? Nope. They had another goal, ended up with the 4-1 victory. Jonathan Quick allowed 4 goals on 25 shots. This was not the performance that I was expecting against the Canucks. But there is something to be said about a team having another team's number. Sometimes for no rhyme or reason, we see in sports one team having success over another team, regardless of what the records are or what year it is, so on and so forth. Right now, the Vancouver Canucks have won 11 straight games against the LA Kings dating over multiple seasons. Why is that happening? I do not know. And maybe, again, it's just for some reason the Canucks have the Kings number, but they beat them again, and the Kings played a poor game, and it looked awful. And the worst part about it, and we'll get into it more in a moment, is that the Kings were coming off of what I thought was their best game of the season in a big win in Edmonton over the Oilers, where they looked tremendous. And the next game, you would never know that Oiler game had just taken place the game before. Before we get into that, though, the very next night, the Kings were back in action in Seattle against the surprising Kraken. This was a battle of the second-place team in the Pacific, the LA Kings, against the third-place team in the Pacific, the Seattle Kraken. There were lineup changes for the Kings after that loss to Vancouver, one of them necessitated by an injury. Sean Walker is day-to-day right now, lower body injury, so he did not play. Jacob Moverari was put in his defensive spot. He was paired up with Sean Walker, and that meant that Matt Roy and Alex Edler would play together as well. There were also some changes in the lines. Blake Lizotte was moved up from the fourth line center to third line center, along with Arthur Kaliev joining him with Kevin Fiala. Rasmus Kupari was moved down to the fourth line center, as was Carl Grundstrom, playing alongside of Jarrett Anderson-Dolan, and Cal Peterson was in net against the Kraken. The Kings couldn't generate any offense in the opening period. Seattle would lead by one after one. Head coach Todd McClellan then in the second period decided to make some more changes. He put Kevin Fiala back up on the top line with Andre Kopitar and Adrian Kempe, and he slid Gabe Velarde down to the third line. Philip Deneau had a great shift in that second period, ended up tying up the game. He batted in his own shot out of midair and into the net after the initial save by former Kings goalie Martin Jones. Third period, though, Trevor Moore would score on a shorthanded goal on a breakaway, but just 18 seconds later, the Kraken would tie it at 2-2. In overtime, the Kings had possession of the puck for the first 2.5 minutes of overtime. The Kraken then got their first possession. Of course, they scored on their first shot, which was on a 2-on-1. Kings get a point, but lose 3-2 in overtime. Cal Peterson was very good in this game. He kept the Kings in it. He ended up allowing 3 goals on 29 shots, but I thought this was one of his better games of the season. That is really the only silver lining that I can take out of the past 2 games for the LA Kings. So the Kings went 1-2-1 on their 4-game road trip through Western Canada and the Pacific Northwest. Great win over the Oilers, bad loss to the Flames and Canucks, and an okay game against the Kraken. All in all, pretty much the same Kings we've seen this season. A mixed bag. Never know what you're going to get from game to game. Again, most disappointed to me was not building any momentum off that great performance in Edmonton, where they were blocking shots and winning all these battles and just tremendous. And like I said, the only positive for me was the performance of Cal Peterson in Seattle. We'll see if that gets him more on track. If it does, great. But again, very, very disappointing to see the Kings play those 2 subpar performances, especially after that great win over Edmonton. It is they are this Kings team so far is a mystery as to what, like I said, what you're going to get from game to game, and we'll see how that plays out for the rest of the season. We are again at the quarter pole now. The LA Kings are of the NHL season, and what do we think about the Kings 25% of the way into the 2022-23 season? Well, we're going to talk about that next. But first, this episode of Locked on LA Kings is brought to you by SimpliSafe. Did you know that over the holidays, property crimes like burglaries and package thefts spike nationally? Porch pirates, we call them in my area. Those people that steal packages off your porch. What a bunch of jerks. That's why our friends at SimpliSafe Home Security are offering 50% off their award-winning security system so that more families can feel safe and secure this holiday season. Order your SimpliSafe system for half off today and enjoy advanced security and greater peace of mind this holiday season. It's really cool. You just control your system from your phone, on your app on your phone. It's got crystal clear HD live streaming of your security cameras. And if you can't watch, not a problem. There are 24/7 professional monitoring agents using Fast Protect technology exclusively from SimpliSafe to capture critical evidence and verify any threats. They even have hazard sensors to detect fires, floods, and other threats to your home. Don't miss your chance to save big on the only security system that I recommend. And you can get 50% off a new SimpliSafe system at simplisafe.com/lockedonnhl today. That's their biggest discount of the year, so don't wait. That is simplisafe.com/lockedonnhl. There is no safe like SimpliSafe. And yes, I just took a sip of my drink. So last year, roughly at this time, the Kings were 8-3 through with 19 points through the first 20 games this season or so. 2 points out of the playoff spot. The Kings this season, at about the quarter pole, are 11-8-2 for 24 points, and in second place in the Pacific Division. LA has played a couple more games, but they are in a much better position as far as points are than they were a year ago. Of course, they did make upgrades this offseason, and they've been relatively healthy so far, so they should have more points at this point of the season. Of the 16 teams that were in the playoffs a year ago at this time, 13 of them ended up making the playoffs. So again, of the 16 teams that were holding a playoff spot at about the 20-21 game mark of the season, 13 of those teams did stay in a playoff spot for the rest of the year. Of the teams that were in the top 3 position of their division, like the Kings are right now at number 2, so we're not talking about the wild card teams, only one of those 12 teams did not make the playoffs. So some numbers for the Kings, who have played again 25% of the season. They are tied with Dallas and Toronto for the 4th most points in the NHL at 24. That said, LA again has played 2 or 3 more games than the teams that they are tied with or that's ahead of them. LA is 6th in the NHL in goals scored, but with 66 goals scored in the season. They are 3rd worst in the NHL in goals allowed with 71. Only the Ducks and Blue Jackets are worse, and those are 2 of the worst teams in the NHL. The Kings are 24th in the NHL on power play percentage at 18.8%. They are 26th in the penalty kill percentage at 74.3. It's almost a wonder when you look at the numbers. The Kings are where they are. So how do we feel about that? How do we feel at where they are at this point in the season? The standings and history suggests they're a playoff team. How the season has gone so far also suggests they aren't anywhere near consistent enough to advance in the playoffs. They started the season with 2 straight losses, followed by 3 straight wins, then followed with 2 straight losses. Then they won 3 of 4, then lost 2 in a row, then won 4 straight, and now they've lost 3 of 4. Excuse me, I apologize. Again, Jekyll and Hyde is who I'm thinking about. One day great, next day bad. Box of chocolates, Forrest Gump, right? Never know what you're going to get. The Kings' identity at this point in the season is they don't have one. Now, will that change? Well, it better if they're going to do anything of any note. There is still time. Of course, you would have hoped at this point they would have showed a little more consistency, but that hasn't been the case. Again, great as far as where they are in the standings. Great that they're in a playoff spot. Great that they're number 2 in the division. Great as far as where they are points-wise overall in the NHL. But, again, no consistency whatsoever with this team. So it's hard to figure out who they are, what they're going to be. Is there still time for it to change? Of course. And again, it's just 25% of the season. We still got 75% left to go. But like I said, usually you get a decent indication of what kind of team you're going to have at this point. And I think the reality is, and I don't think I'm making, any bold claims here. The reality is we do not know what type of team the LA Kings are at this point, and that's frustrating and disappointing. We'll talk more about the Kings in just a second, but I do need to let you know that this show is also brought to you by BetOnline.net, your number one source for sports betting information, news, stats, and analysis. Get the latest odds and trends for every professional and amateur league out there, from football to basketball to soccer. The World Cup is underway, and esports as well. They've got it all at betonline.net. And if you love sports podcasts, you can find those at BetOnline as well. It is the fastest and easiest way to get your betting fix. Head to betonline.net today or use your mobile device to learn more. That is BetOnline, where the game starts. And yes, I'm going to take a sip again. So let's take a look at the Pacific Division standings. As I got a piece of ice in my mouth. That's great. And I apologize. This episode's going to be a little bit shorter than normal, but I think under the circumstances, hopefully you guys will understand. The Pacific Division standings, as we start a new week, we like to look at the standings, see where the Kings are. Vegas Golden Knights are still in the number 1 position, 14-4-1, the record for Vegas, 29 points, most in the Pacific Division, most in the Western Conference, and only 3 points behind New Jersey and Boston for the most points in the NHL. Are actually 2 points behind New Jersey, 3 points behind Boston. The Kings are in second place, 11-8-2 for 24 points. In third place is Seattle at 10-5-3 for 23 points. They do have 3 games in hand on the Kings. So likely in those 3 games, they're going to get at least 2 points, you would think. And that would really realistically mean that Seattle's probably the second place team in the division. And the Kings are the third. In fourth place, you've got the Edmonton Oilers, 10-8 Their record for 20 points. They're the number one wildcard team right now in the West. In fifth place, you've got the Calgary Flames at 8-7-2 for 18 points. They're tied with St. Louis in points, but the Blues have one more win, so they get the tiebreaker and they would hold down the final wildcard spot at the moment. Vancouver is in sixth place, 6-9-3 on the year for 15 points. The Sharks are 6-11-3 also for 15 points. And in last place, the Anaheim Ducks, 5-12-1 for 11 points. Did you know the Anaheim Ducks are the only team in the NHL that has yet to win a game in regulation? Of their 5 wins, they've all been either overtime or a shootout. That is amazing. They've played 18 games and not one win in regulation so far this season. So, hey, our neighbors to the south are having it a lot worse than we are at this time. But then again, the expectations were a lot different. The talent on the roster is a lot different. So, yeah, so far at the quarter pole of the NHL season, the LA Kings, not sure what they're going to be. Happy where they are on the standings. Happy that at this point they're a playoff team. I'm encouraged by the talent on the roster. I'm encouraged we have not been hit by any really major significant injuries at this point. But again, got to be more consistent. The special teams, my God, need to improve a lot. I mentioned Jim Hiller coming in as an assistant, said there's no way the Kings special teams will be worse than they were a year ago. Well, they're either at the same point or worse because the penalty kill is not very good so far. So that has to get a lot better. Will it soon? Your guess is as good as mine. I do want to let you know about a special show that we are having coming up tomorrow. Jared Shafran is the manager of communications and content for the Ontario Reign, and he's going to join us on tomorrow's show to get us updated on what's going on with the Ontario Reign. And there are a lot of players down there right now that you either are familiar with or should be familiar with, like Brant Clark, like Quentin Byfield, Alex Turcotte, Martin Chromiak. And we're going to check in with Jared to find out how all those players are faring. Clark coming back, obviously, from being shaken up in the Dallas game, getting some extra work in Ontario before the Kings have to make a decision on what they're going to do with him. Quentin Byfield coming back from a bit of a flu bug. I know what that's like. Alex Turcotte coming back from concussions, and Martin Chromiak coming back from an appendectomy. So want to find out how all those players are doing, and then just a big general update on how the Ontario Reign are doing so far this season as well. Also, the Kings will be back in action tomorrow night, hosting the New York Rangers for a quick home game before they break for Thanksgiving. Face-off is set for 7:30, and it will be broadcast locally on Bally Sportsnet and on the LA Kings iHeart Audio network. We will have a full breakdown, obviously, on Wednesday's show of how the Kings play in that game against the New York Rangers before the Thanksgiving break. I want to thank you for bearing with me and for watching and listening to this episode of Locked On LA Kings. Thanks for making it your first listen. For your next listen, would ask you to please check out Locked On Sports Today, the biggest stories of the day, plus instant reactions, big game recaps, and the take of the day, all available on the Audacity app and YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts. Again, that is Locked On Sports Today. If you have any questions or comments about the show, the email address is lockedoneddie@gmail.com, EDDIE. If you want to follow the show on Twitter, we are at Locked On LA Kings, and on Instagram at Locked On LA Kings as well. Again, thanks for bearing with me. Sorry the show is a little bit shorter than usual, but under the circumstances, I'm giving you what I got. Thank you for listening and watching to Locked On LA Kings, and we will talk to you tomorrow. And as always, we close out the show by saying, Go Kings Go.